chance to hear it, so let her tell it. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerns. You hear some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to
Good evening, Cayman. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you. From national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, Cayman. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now, here's Sabrina.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Tuesday episode of Sabrina Speaks right here on CMRTV.com. It's good to be back with you on this Tuesday afternoon for what is expected to be a very informative show. It's been asked by yourself with the latest changes, and some questions have been coming up. Because we're going to title this episode of Sabrina Speaks today as Families, Thresholds, and the Storm. Cayman's immigration crossroads, because I know a lot of questions have been asked, concerns now with persons being displaced in I'm going to call it Jamaica, and we have a large number of persons who are living here, and that they're asking the questions. But you know what? Before going into that, good afternoon, good morning to our global family, and welcome to each and every one of you, yes, for another episode of Sabrina Speaks, which is known for to be Voices of the Islands, conversations for the world, and the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about dependence, income thresholds, what we know it nationally from the immigration perspective, and the hard choices workers and employers must face in navigating the new chapter, navigating what life has become post-Melissa, and just looking at where life is concerned holistically. But before we get into that, we have a lot of housekeeping to do, birthday shout outs as well, and congratulatory celebrations as well for those who are excelling in their workforce, their workplaces. But the content you're about to hear, including any discussions or opinions from myself, guests, and or participants, is intended solely for general informational and entertainment purposes. It is not a substitute for professional legal, medical, or financial advice. I encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for specific concerns. Bridge Media Limited and all its affiliates disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken in reliance on the information presented here. Again, it's good to be back with you, and thank you to all our new subscribers. But still, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, because it's very, very good to be back here with you on this happy Tuesday. You got to make the best of it. I was out on the road, and oh my God, got out a little late, but I didn't expect for traffic to hit me between the Hurley's roundabout and in the vicinity of Kebabs and Selkirk Drive. There were literally 2 accidents in that space of time, to the point where the traffic officer was seen walking from the accident at Selkirk, going to the accident in the Hurley's roundabout earlier on. And it was, even though one appeared to be more serious than the other, the more serious one is a car overturned by Selkirk across from Alakabob's. And then the other one was someone ran into a truck's back. Someone was rear-ended in the middle of the roundabout, literally. So it was mayhem. And right, I would say it all happened or pretty much went down around 10 minutes to 3, or if not quarter to 3. So that was as persons were trying to get to schools and school buses going, all that sort of stuff. So it's been crazy. At the past couple of just turn down your whatever you got in the back for me, please. Whatever is going on with our roads, but the lanes, but the police actually, and smart, good for him. He used his noggin. I saw him walking. Good for him. That's thinking on your feet. But we got her before I go into the weather. Good evening, caller. How are you? Welcome.
Well, fine, thanks, Sabrina. Have you finished with your housekeeping? Do you
No,
want a few more minutes?
haven't started. You can call back in about 3 to 5 minutes. I got to do the weather, birthday shout outs, and that sort of stuff. Yeah. Before going into
about 35, roughly 35 minutes?
No, about 10, 15. Because we're going to get into some,
10,
about 10 minutes. But you can, if you listen in,
okay.
then we'll be good. You'll see how about transition.
Okay, good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay, cheers.
Good to hear you. Sure.
Later.
Yeah, let's get right into it. Wow. You see there already? We got your call in. 936-8255 is the number to call in and join in on the conversation. But let's do the housekeeping first to get everybody settled in and all that good stuff. I'm not just doing this to tell you because I know a lot of you are waiting. Some people are there from the time we get started. But I understand this hour of the evening as well. A lot of you are either getting into your car, you're streaming me on YouTube from your phones and that sort of stuff. So I try to give you the housekeeping, that sort of stuff before we get into the crooks and crannies of our conversation, because I know this particular topic has been asked about for quite some time, and I'm more than happy to go through it. And I'm thinking Denny is going to be calling in at some point talking about Clause 35, and I'll tell you what that is if you don't know what we're talking about. But don't you worry, we will definitely keep you up to speed. No one will be left out. Please post your questions, call in if you need more clarity or should you require further explanation as we go along and learn in this space. But let's get into the weather. The synopsis calls for mostly fair conditions are expected with the low chance of a few sporadic showers as a ridge of high pressure dominates the weather pattern across the region. As a result of moderate winds and seas are expected to prevail, satellite analysis indicates scattered patches of low-level clouds across the islands. The forecast for tonight calls for mostly fair, becoming partly cloudy at times, with a 20% chance of showers. Temperatures will fall near to mid-upper 70s. Winds will be east to northeast at 10 to 15 knots. Seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. Now, the forecast for tomorrow calls for partly cloudy skies with 20% chance of late afternoon showers. Temperatures will rise near the mid to upper 80s with a heat index of 95. Winds will be east to northeast, 10 to 15 knots, and seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. Now, tides call for high tide was at 1:32 this afternoon, and a low is expected for 8:29 tonight. Tomorrow, there's going to be a high tide at 12:58 a.m. and a low tide at 7:01 a.m. The sun is going to set this evening at 5:44. And sunrise tomorrow morning at 6:40 in the morning. Now, the outlook calls for gradually decreasing winds and seas through Thursday evening as the ridge of high pressure begins to weaken as a frontal system approaches the coast of Florida. So everyone who's already not in the United States, especially Miami or Tampa, wherever you are in the United States, gobble, gobble time. That's Thursday. American Thanksgiving is this Thursday. And that's pretty much what's happening. Cooler temperatures are going to be there for this Thanksgiving weekend. So there you have it. If you're planning on traveling to get those Black Friday specials, make sure you take something that's not your tropical weather attire, that something can keep you warm, because we ain't used to that. But I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Big shout outs. Let's say happy birthday to Miss Debbie. Miss Debbie celebrates her birthday. Look at you. Look at you. I know they spoiled you today. Yeah, in that Sawana office. I see you, Miss Debbie. I'm wishing you all the best. And we've been getting a few persons just saying happy birthday to you as well on our Sabrina Speaks, Sabrina Turner community activist page as well, celebrating with you as well. May you live to see many more. And I hope that you were spoiled by everybody there in the office, and those grand ones are keeping you busy as usual. Lots of love going out to you. And I'm hoping that you have had a wonderful day. This allows me as well, since we're shouting out persons here, to let's say a big shout out to Damian Campbell. Yeah, look at there. Teeth like these. You see how he's smiling? My man's smiling. Well, we want to congratulate him because he was recognized as the Employee of the Year for the Mosquito Control Unit. Yes, and we got to celebrate with him. And guess what? I even got a message from your wife to share with you of her pride. She says, seeing you win Employee of the Year fills my heart with so much pride. I've watched you work with determination, patience, and passion. Even on the toughest days, you truly deserve this recognition. I'm endlessly proud of the man you are, and I'm so grateful to walk through life with someone as hardworking and committed as you. Congratulations. So there you go. And look, greetings, well wishes, congratulatory message to you. Congratulations to you, Damian. I know it's not easy for anybody out there, especially working under certain conditions, and for the amount of bites that you all get just in your role in helping us control the mosquito population. Congratulations for you for this recognition. And we want to, there's the award. There you go. See? We want to wish you all success as you embark as one of those, another hardworking civil servant in Earth civil service. So congratulations to you, my dear. So all of you who want to, if you got dedications, that sort of stuff, and you want to send me a message so that we can do it with a picture if you want, hey, this is the space for it. This is what we're all about, building community, building this space, and we will share and celebrate with you as well. I got to do a reel with him as well. I just was out today doing a lot of running up and down, but it's not my thing. Oh God, oh no, I don't like that at all. Let's see who's in the house. Damian Henry, you beat Connor today. You beat Marshall. You were the first to actually comment. Good for you. Good for you, Damian. Good to see you. Dulce Amaya, 8126. Hi, hola, ¿qué pasó? I'm hoping you're Spanish. I just automatically went there. Strawberry Queen. Nice. Where do we get these names from? OMG. Alejandro. Hi, how are you? It's good to have you with us live. Cameron. Oh, dear Jesus. Where you been? How come, what happened to you yesterday? Yes, I'm started. I have, and he knows why he was asking the question, because he knows we always do housekeeping. You something. Drive at 5 with Sabrina and Danny. Oh, for the record, Danny told you, you didn't tune in yesterday, but he called in just before Woody Foster joined us, Cameron, and he said, well, tell Cameron I got credit. So we're expecting him to continue the conversation with us today. Should be a very informative show, I could be honest. But yeah, it's good to have you with us. You're always one that needs time out, but I like your spirit. I like your vibe. And we just got to love you. That's all it is. Hi, Real Michelle. It's good to see you joining us. Connie, Bonnie. How are you this evening, my love? Hope that you like that thing. I need your feedback on that one. Just message me to let me know. You're saying good evening to everyone as well. Laugh out loud, Saka, if outside a chat. You know what? You know who I'm missing a lot too? Aliano has been quiet, but I'm hoping because the season is beginning to pick up that Aliano has just found himself so busy, which we'd be happy for him. And there's just certain ones that comes on that you just look for. They're I wouldn't call them trouble. They just keeps me going. But yeah, you really got to pay attention amongst keeping it focused on your subject matter and trying to deliver how you have to deliver for the people. But it is good, really, the feedback. But I welcome your feedback today on the conversation. It is going to be a little emotive. I can see that because it is a measuring tool that we're using as well. And it's going to be some hard truths. And for those of you just joining us and probably did not see the promotion of what we're going to be discussing today, is talking about those persons who are working here on work permits and interested or have a desire to have dependents here. Income thresholds is what we will be talking about, and the hard choices, unfortunately, some workers and employers alike may have to face. And it's going to be a little bit challenging because even with what the current income threshold is right now, understanding the implications or the impact that Hurricane Melissa has had on Jamaica, we have had persons asking questions because of situations that they may find their kids may find themselves in. They're not in the position, I guess, wanting to go home, but the questions are being asked. How is it possible for me to have my child, my children? I've even gotten questions aside for stepchildren as well, and siblings, brothers and sisters to be dependents. So it's broad, but the harsh reality is that without, and we'll break it down, there's certain sectors, there's just certain categories of persons based on their income that the laws are not going to allow them to have dependents. And there's nothing that's stopping anyone, to be honest, from having a dependent, making an application. Making an application to have, you can make the application, but it doesn't have to be approved. And another question that has been coming in is whether or not any relaxation under the current immigration legislation because of the hurricane impacts over there in Jamaica. Nothing has been done. I don't foresee that happening, but you will just have to make the application, and I will share my screen through this discussion so that you will see what the requirements are. Where's that picture? There we go. You will see what the requirements are for yourself. So yeah. We just got a request to let's share birthday celebrations as well. Mr. George Shillette has celebrated a birthday. Happy belated birthday greetings to you, Mr. Shillette. I know you're recovering from, I think you had knee replacement surgery or something. But big happy birthday, belated birthday greetings to you. 75 years young. Good for, and then if you got them new knees, oh yeah, new knees and everything, good for you. Wish you all the best and many, many more from all of us here at the Sabrina Speaks family, and definitely from your family. They're wishing you belated birthday greetings. Good for you, and speedy recovery as well. Hope everything goes well and you're making sure that you're doing those range of motions exercise and that physiotherapy. Make sure you follow those instructions. There you go. Connie Bonnie, what are you saying? Anybody hear anything from Jim? Nope. Look like him vexed with the whole of us because I put him out. Jim is traveling. Where about you? He is somewhere celebrating off the grid and he's living his best life. I will do another check in post show with him for proof of life. That's what I'll do. And then I'll report back to you tomorrow. But it's good. You see, when you got a community looking out for fans, that's one of the best places to be. Oh my gosh. Cameron, Danny got credit. He got it from yesterday, Cameron. And we had to cut him short because we were expecting him to call back in a little later today because the subject that he wanted to bring up is more aligning with today's topic because we're going to go and talk about immigration. Hi, Miss Dorothy McLeod. How are you? Hope you're doing good. What you say now? Cameron, I have paper towel to dry my tears. You just sickening. Hey, Marshall, how are you? I hope you're hard at work. Time for Jim to become a sovereign. Jim nowhere, but no. Jim is living his best life. But yes, I promise you, I will touch base with Jim to make sure that he's okay and share those greetings with him. But sometimes there's a little delay. But I'll definitely report as long as I get proof. But yes, to the caller that was calling, today we're going to go into to just let's explore this whole thing of immigration, what is actually before us with what is being proposed. But we're focusing in on the work permit amendments. Amendments as in amending your work permit to include a child, a dependent, or children in some cases. And we're framing it around the realities of what it takes or what that process is like specifically for a child to be included on your work permit. I will be as compassionate. I would be as understanding, handle this subject with dignity as best as I can, because I understand your needs, your desires. But at the end of the day, sometimes reality is what it is. And sometimes the decision has to be made by yourself, meaning yourself, the foreign worker, who may find themselves in a awkward position based on their income, based on knowing how hard it is to live, work in the Cayman Islands by yourself and still have to let your salary stretch to not only pay your rent, utilities, get your food, and also provide support for your children, or build your life back where you're coming from. Now, the amendment part of it is for you to look at the realities of what it would cost and what the process would be like, so that hopefully you would understand your chances of getting a yes or a no if you have the real conversations with yourself. Okay. And I am aware of the unfortunate devastation that has had the whole lives of so many persons in Jamaica, especially, displaced, and the importance of, it's just a human instinct that you would want to be with your family during this time. And I totally understand the pain, first of all, of separation. And it's bad enough without a hurricane that you've made the decision to go to a foreign country to live and work. Hopefully you'd be providing a better life for your family back home. And I understand that pain of separation and the desire to possibly want your kids with you now after the aftermath. But it is a delicate balance in reality when you look at the Cayman Islands, what we're facing as well when it comes to schools, roads, health, childcare, and everything right now appears to be stretched at the breaking point. There are going to be some serious fees that are going to be levied on non-Caymanians come the 1st of January, and it's just real. So there are going to be some very hard decisions that a lot of employers and employees will have to make if they find themselves pretty much caught in this unfortunate situation. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Sabrina Speaks. You're live. What's on your mind?
Good evening again, Sabrina. Today, I think that you won't have enough time to cover everything you want to cover today, because each of those like subdivisions of your show is the show on its own. But we always have to try our best within the time available.
Correct.
Now, first of all, my heart goes out to the people in Jamaica. Over the last practically 35 years, I've had friends there. When I was in Cayman, I visited there often. I mean, it's just Cayman and Jamaica are so interwoven historically and otherwise. And so for me as well, having, since 2003 and my association with Cayman, Jamaica is always close to me. So I just trust that everything is going as well as it could in the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in relation to the topic about the possibility of some of the children there who have got parents in the Cayman Islands perhaps coming over for a temporary period of time, that is natural. Once something like that happens, a parent, of course, would like to do their best for their family. But you see, that's where the issue now of immigration, again, the broader issue of immigration comes in, because in Cayman as elsewhere, when the local people feel that they are secure in their country, they can get the jobs they want, more or less, that they are not being overwhelmed by numbers in terms of immigration in the society as a whole, in their jobs and so on. So long as they are secure, they will always be welcoming of other people, and they will be really willing to allow people to come in and stay for a little while, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. But if Caymanians are not overall satisfied about the whole immigration and job preferences issue, then you will find that they will be less sympathetic. Yes, they might send supplies to Jamaica, but when you say, okay, we want some of those people to come over and stay for a while things improve over there, you will find that Caymanians will be much, much less willing to be accommodating regarding that. Why? Because they are dissatisfied with the broader issue. Because
in general, say, well, already.
Exactly. So that if they'll say, well, okay, we might be kind enough now to come and allow these people to come. What if tomorrow some other legislation changes, they stay on and then they get a job which a Caymanian is supposed to get. So Caymanians will be quite justified in having that fear. So what am I saying? I'm saying that if you want Caymanians to be sympathetic to people coming over to come and stay for a little while, you have to fix the immigration system. Now, for me, that's where the problem is. I will say that this government, in my view, up to this point, they haven't sufficiently engaged the public as to what they want to do. Me, as not just a lawyer, but as a legislative counsel, I'm having a problem understanding particularly Section 35 of the amendment bill, which introduces a new Section 83A, I think. And one of the problems regarding that is that it doesn't deal with one of the most important issues regarding immigration. That is this idea that will these new tough measures apply to people who are already in Cayman? Or will it apply only to those people who come after 9 years? That is such a fundamental issue. And yet up to now, government hasn't really come out clearly regarding it. Now, my knowledge about this is from speaking to people. According to what I understand, and I take this, I love a friend of mine in Cayman who says, I'll give it to you as cheaply as I got it, The way I got it was that, the way I got it was there was some group which said, they were given legal advice to say that if they applied it to people who are already in Cayman, in other words, for example, you've been in Cayman for 5 years, and they try to roll you over at the end of 8, they say, no, legally you can't do that. That's one advice they've gotten. Now, that advice is totally wrong. There's no legal basis for that, okay? But they say that advice has been given. Others are saying, well, yes, they've given them advice that if they wanted to apply it to people who are in Cayman, they can do so legally speaking, but they just feel that it would be unfair. Now, the question that you will ask, unfair to who? Unfair to you and unfair to Caymanians? Okay, that's the problem.
It's the balance, because Caymanians have been asking for the immigration reform. And what I'm getting now, when the harsh realities, don't mean to break your train of thought, but for context,
no.
Caymanians are saying now that, look, we realize, and the Honorable Minister Michael Miles himself has said, the demand for work permits is not going to go away anytime soon. And he estimates come January of 2026, there will be over 40,000 work permits, and it's going to increase because of some big hotels that are opening. We're looking at the Mandarin and something also in Pease Bay. So that has already cleared the air. But even when you look at the statistics, and don't quote me on the exact numbers, but for what was released of unemployed Caymanians, it's just under 1,400. And if you're saying we got these big hotels that are coming on stream, it's impossible right now that you're going to be able to fill every one of those vacancies with that 1,000 and odd Caymanians that are there. I'm just telling you what stats they're saying.
Exactly. Now, and that takes us further afield, but very relevantly. There are people in Cayman today. I won't mention one very distinguished Cayman who called another show. He said, look, Cayman at the moment doesn't even need one extra hotel. And you know why he's saying that? He's saying that you are selling this story now. This is now responding to the government.
Mm-hmm.
That you are selling this story that there will be so many thousands of people who are required in these hotels and so on. The truth of the matter is that the overwhelming number of jobs in those hotels is going to go to foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
And and that the local people are going to be the usual thing. They will be housekeeping, sweeping,
in
and
the lower
kind of
paying jobs and not necessarily the higher ones. But now I'm seeing our locals are more tolerant now, from what I'm understanding. Okay, we're not saying anything about the work permits, you know. We're not saying nothing. This is the tone now that I'm hearing. It's just protecting, not going on to status, not going on to permanent residence. That's what we're trying to slow down, if not just put a quota on. That's the tone now, Mr. Balika, that is now coming out.
Exactly. And that's another point I was going to make, which has been made by another distinguished Cayman for a long time, the capping of grants. Because the question that you ask is, what is the aim of the immigration reform? Two main things. One, you want to ensure that the job preferences that are open to Caymanians are more secure, they become more available, and so on. That's one. The other one, you want to ensure that the population in Cayman is not continuing to dwindle. That is, the population of Caymanians is of right. And I prefer the term now, Cayman is of right, because it's got a legal term. It covers anybody who either through one parent or a grandparent is connected to Cayman. Those people are dwindling in the society as a proportion of the population, as a proportion of the workforce. There was a research which was done by Dr. Mikana Scott, a very young PhD lady student, and I watched her seminar about 2 years ago. And she said that when she went to the workplace, she found that actually those people who are Caymanians as of right are only 28%. That is, if you look at the government and the private sector, only 28%. So when they tell you, oh, Caymanians are actually somewhere around 45%, they are including status grants. Okay,
they're not indigenous paper in born. That's just who has they're combining everything.
Yeah. They shouldn't combine it, because they should always keep it separate, because then it allows you to see exactly what is going on. And there is nothing wrong with them being considered separately, because as has been pointed out many, many times, there is already a distinction under the law regarding Caymanian as of right and other Caymanians. And also, it just allows you to respond better to what people are asking for. If you tell people today, you know what, the indigenous Caymanians are only 28%, and the status holders are also 29%, they are not going to say, oh, very good, then we are almost 50% as Caymanians. No. The way Caymanians think, when they say Caymanian, they are thinking of a Caymanian as of right.
Yeah.
And so the issue of capping grants is important, because unless you cap the grants, you can never be sure that you will not continue being a minority, because at the current rate, to be very, very, very frank with you, at the current rate, in about 15 years, the Caymanians as of right will be down maybe to about 10%.
Correct.
At the current rate. And now,
which is what they're labeling as generational Caymanians for the context of this conversation.
Yes, some people say generational Caymanians. I've stopped using that term, or at least I try not to use it, because I have found that certain people who are Caymanians is of right, in the sense that their father, for example, is a Caymanian.
Right.
They have said sometimes, "Oh no, but you are excluding me when you say generational, because you are suggesting that it's only people with grandparents and this." It leads to a misunderstanding.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you say Caymanian of right, it means those indigenous people with 5-6 generations, but it also means even a person who's got only one parent who is
Caymanian
an
at the time.
indigenous Caymanian.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Caymanian by descent, because that's a broader group, and also the concept already exists. So they need to cap the grants, because unless you cap the grants, you are not sure whether or not you will be, you are arresting this trend, because which is the ultimate aim.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very disappointed actually the other day, by the way, talking about indigenous Caymanians, in relation to this issue of retrospection. I was watching the acting deputy governor.
Mm-hmm.
And she, when they were talking in finance committee, and she said, "Oh, you see, we don't want to apply the matter retrospectively, because that will cause a problem regarding, succession planning." I don't know why she keeps talking about retrospective, because if you apply it to people who are here, you are not applying it retrospectively, legally speaking. And the Attorney General is sitting there, is not correcting this, and they've kept talking and talking and talking. If today you say that everybody, including somebody who has applied, will have to apply again, so long as you make it clear in the law, that is not retrospective and it can be done. Now, if they don't want to do it that way, then they shouldn't say it's because of the law. So they should tell people that retrospection doesn't even arise at all. If you apply to everybody who is in Cayman today, even if they've been here for 7 years, that is not retrospective. So these are issues they have to deal with. Now, the other things that they haven't dealt with, the more obvious ones, for example, are Immigration Regulation 6.
Right.
It says that when you apply for a succession, for a work permit, the board may ask you for a succession plan. May. It used to say shall. It was changed to may. What they need to do, they need to tell us, do they want to make that shall again? I think they should make it shall, because otherwise all these things they are talking about, you see, once you make it may, then effectively it is not required.
Right.
And you cannot
It's an
have
option.
jobs.
It's an option.
Exactly, it's an option. And then you've got two sections, Section 26 and 41 of the Public Service Management Act. Those are not very good sections, because they say that a Caymanian will only be given preference in a job if their qualifications are roughly at the same level as a foreigner. So in other words, you've got these people who are almost at a draw.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that's the case, then you prepare the Caymanian. No, but that doesn't give Caymanians any real preference. You must say that if you are a Caymanian and you qualify for the job and the references are good, you've got, say, 10 years experience, the job requires 5 years. Even if there's a foreigner with 20 years experience, they shouldn't give it to the foreigner, because when are you going to give Caymanians
a chance?
a chance?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why, to me, I feel the government has not sufficiently engaged the people on some of these issues. For example, do we know how many grants have been given this year? There have been 3 quarters which have gone. The 4th quarter is about to end. They are still giving grants, I'm quite sure, because they give about every week. Can government tell us that this year, the first 3 quarters, this is how many PR and status grants have been given? No, they haven't done that. And unless you tell people that, you are not really engaging them in a full-scale conversation. And then they've increased the work permit fees, right?
Yeah, that's being proposed.
I understand. Yes, I understand. I don't know how true it is, but I understand from some sources that the increase is partly influenced by the fact that they expect that there will be less work permit fees being given, in the future, maybe not quite next year, but in the future. And so they want to ensure that they are still getting about the same amount of money.
So that's why the filing fee went up, and not necessarily, at least as yet, because persons who are business owners, it's only a matter of time before the actual fee goes up. In many cases, the fees where work permits has not been touched, but the processing fees has been filing fees has been. That's not
touched.
straight across the board, though. That's not straight across the board, but where we've seen like the biggest impacts so far is, but they're still working on it, because the member of parliament minister actually said that after the town hall public consultation meetings, which is another thing that I feel is a disservice unless they're going to be doing a town hall meetings so far. That there are 15 additional amendments that had came about since having town hall meetings, but he was not able to say then what they were, and the necessary amendment would be made in when they get back to Parliament, which would in committee stage, but then that would not have been given to the public before for wider public consultation. Right now, we're all in the dark. We're all in the dark as to what those 15 amendments are. But that's where he wants to actually make those amendments at committee stage.
Yeah, and you've raised an excellent point, which a legislative council like me will also raise and will agree with. You see, when you are doing major policy changes and major legislation, you shouldn't make such important amendments at committee stage. That's why initially, I think in the earlier call that I made maybe 2 weeks ago or so, I'd say that the best way to do this complex legislation would have been first to do a green paper to say, this is what we are suggesting. And then you publish it, and then the people discuss it. It goes to the town halls. And then after that, then you do a white paper, and then you can accompany it with a draft. And then you put it out there to say, okay, this is what we have accepted, and now what we are taking to Parliament.
Right.
But you can't, in a major piece of legislation like this, rush it out there. And then now you say, well, we'll make the 15 amendments in the House. That's how you make mistakes. And the public, the point you've made, the public would
not have had a chance
to see it.
But neither has the opposition, because they've asked. Now, from what was actually explained in Finance Committee, that they did actually have presentation with members of the opposition, which was good. But I don't know if that will be repeated with what these 15 will be. But then at what point does the member of public society will know what these amendments are, understanding how national of a topic this is?
Precisely, because the public will want to know, okay, part of the thing is that, you see, you can make a suggestion today, another person will make a suggestion, and the two of them will be conflicting. Government has to find a compromise. Once you make that compromise, you really have to take it back to the people and say, well, what do you think about this? And there's even a broader point. You see, in Cayman, there's this thing that, we can do this at committee stage amendments. No. Committee stage amendments are not meant for major policy changes. Committee stage amendments are meant to, like a bill has been discussed in great detail, it has now gone to Parliament, and if there's some little cleanup that needs to be done, or maybe some one or two little points the opposition might insist on, then you do it as a committee stage amendment. It is not supposed to allow 15 major amendments.
Well, he didn't say
for some of the reasons that you've said.
Everybody's speculating right now because we don't know. What if it's a semicolon? What is it? If it is, because shall and may are huge based on where it is being placed. So you may look at it as a little word, but the impact could be humongous. So it is hard to speculate right now because no one knows, at least the public, to the best of my knowledge, what these 15 amendments are going to be. And remember, there is a public cry as well, even though in a public space, maybe few in number, for some sort of preview of the regulations. No one has seen the regulations.
That's exactly the point I was. Well, today it's almost as if we had the same thing in mind. The regulations. You see, regulations in principle, in terms of the principle, you've been a parliamentarian yourself. Regulations are meant to deal with matters of detail. Or you'll say, okay, fine, these are the immigration regulations. What are we going to do? Okay, some fees, we'll have them prescribed in the regulations. The forms will have in the regulations and so on. Regulations are meant for not major issues of principle. But what they are trying to do, and that's where Section 35 comes in of the bill, Clause 35, they have given themselves power there to make regulations that will allow for limitations, conditions, and exemptions. Now, it seems to me they want to be able to have this power. You see, they've already announced that they want some exemptions for the police, for health services, and for the teachers and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like, I haven't seen those in the bill. Maybe they are there, but it seems that they want to be able to have these exemptions as regulations. No. These matters should come in the bill itself because they may seriously
primary
undermine
legislation.
what you already.
Mm-hmm.
They should come into primary legislation. Now, there are also other options you can have. You can say, okay, you can have it by regulation. Now, this is not the preferred thing, but if they, as a matter of political compromise, they wanted to compromise, they could say, okay, you can make the regulations, but they will not come into force until they are approved by the Legislative Assembly. There is that option to be able to do that.
Then it could be
to me,
debated.
I feel that it will be debated. You take it to committee, you take it to a committee of the whole house, and people can debate it again. And you could even publish the regulations for public consultation again. Okay,
but it hasn't happened. They said it's not a norm, but for something as topical as this, as long of an impact, if we don't get it right, and people will say, look, enough talk, we need to do what we got to do to protect us as Caymanian. Something is better than nothing. Okay, I totally understand that. But if you can't continue to do things in the same way and expect different results, all the public is asking for, even though in a public space of this manner, it may only be a few in number, the public deserves to have seen the regulations before. Just like what we're saying, what are the 15 amendments? There has been excellent town hall meetings, district to district, but okay, what were the findings? What was the feedback? Where is that? But maybe these numbers, maybe all of this will be presented on the floor of Parliament when they go back in the next couple of days. We don't know. Maybe. It's been, the silence is deafening.
Yeah, and you see, I love you bringing the point to say that they've said, oh, but this is not the norm to take regulation to public consultation. You know what the Bible says? The Bible says that the law was made for man and not man for the law. Okay, if the Bible says, the Bible says if you're, now I have to use this word. It means a donkey, of course, but in modern time they use it differently. They said if your ass falls into a pit, you won't pull it out because it's a Sabbath day. No, you are going to do it. So you won't say, well, look, because because this is not the norm.
You don't work on the Sabbath, but if your donkey falls in a pit on the Sabbath, you're not going to save it because the sun hasn't set yet?
Yeah, or something like that, you know. the day hasn't died in the West, the Adventist. So you see, and let me mention another thing, because this will help us sort of analyze this. You know, in places like Australia and even in England, there are certain regulations which, if they are important enough, they do take them to public consultation. Okay, so yes, they are right that generally speaking, the regulations don't go to public consultation. But the reason that they don't go to public consultation usually is because they don't contain issues of principle. But when you want to make regulations which will contain issues of principle, then you must say, okay, even if there are going to be regulations, we will take them to public consultation, because at the end of the day, what you want is a piece of legislation where you have sufficiently consulted, and when you take it to the House, there is a substantial agreement on that. Well, last little point I want to make on the vagueness of the consultation. You know, they have said this relates a little bit to the same issue about retrospection. I know Wes, a good friend Wes, has been saying that, well, you see, there are those people who have already begun their journey towards getting PR and status. I don't know what he means by the journey. I fear that what is meant by the journey, it means if you are already in Cayman, you have begun a journey, so that they must preserve your rights. I was listening to Chris Saunders on.
But where do you draw
the
line in the sand for that? Is that anybody who's here 6 years of 9, 7 years of 9, or is it one day after arriving to start? What does the definition of journey mean? Understanding that rollover is 9 years. I can understand somebody being here 6 years, 7 years. Where is the line drawn?
Precisely. And that's exactly when and this was done, I think, in the immigration law, maybe the one which was done, one of the many 20 years ago. I was having a chat on this matter actually with a former MLA a few days ago, and we talked about this because I believe, and he's the one who reminded me of this, that actually there was at one time a transitional provision where they said, okay, the new provisions will apply to everybody except those who had been here like 5 or 6 years. Because what they decided is, rather than say that all of you, including those who are about to apply, will have to comply with the new laws, they said, okay, the fair way to do it is to say, okay, fine. If you've been here at least, I forget the number of years, at least 6 years, then you can proceed and apply under the new law, under the old law. And then if you just have been in Cayman for a year, 2, up to 5 years, then you will have to apply under the new law because you haven't really invested anything in Cayman anyway. Okay, so that is what they decided in that particular case. But you see, the way they have written it now, at least the way I seem to understand it, is that so long as you are already in Cayman by the 31st of December 2025, you will apply under the old law. That's the way I understand
That's
it.
what, well, again, that is all subject to change because we don't know what is going to come, because we don't know if this, what you're actually drawing an example to, is maybe one of the 15 changes. We don't know.
Exactly. We don't know that. All we do know is that at the moment, at least in terms of the way they announced it, they said it won't apply to anybody who is already in Cayman by the time this law comes into effect, the way they announced it. But as you say, since people have said something about it, maybe that is going to change. But you see, again, you don't want to change it in the house. For example, if you want to work a compromise to say, okay, at least if you've been in Cayman for 6 years, you can apply under the old law. But if you come after that, then you apply under the new law. Then you want to hear from the public, do they agree with that?
Exactly. Okay? Exactly. But if they're only doing that, and the responsible MP, let's say those, well, all of them actually, whether or not you're sitting on the government side or you're in opposition, but even more so in opposition, if they know what is going to be presented, it's up to them to have meetings, however they want to do it, win their respective constituencies or on a wider scale. But do you feel, because look, the budget was passed. Okay, fine. The sitting government has the majority of numbers. Do you feel that that is probably why it's almost handled like in this manner, where it doesn't matter what the opposition say, they don't necessarily need their support to pass certain things? Devil's advocate.
Yeah, because you see, at the end of the day, even if you have the numbers, any government will, as much as possible, try to bring the opposition with them, because the opposition do represent a substantial number of the population
as well.
Okay. Now I know that I know that you got elected. So if the opposition, you can't bring them along, then you do it, because you are the government. But at the end of the day, what you really want to do, particularly on an issue of immigration, which should be bipartisan,
exactly.
Bipartisan. Yeah, it should be bipartisan because it is such an important, emotive thing, and really, as much as possible, the government should not be seen to be using its numbers to ram down the throat of the opposition or the public. What it wants to do, what it must do, is be transparent, be able to show the public that you want to do that which they want to do. Because to me, I'll tell you what, in the Cayman Islands, I think that the government is too much controlled by the private sector.
How did you come to that?
I worked in government, and I sat in meetings where sometimes somebody from the private sector calls, I won't call the name of the official, calls the name of the minister, the public official in the meeting, and asks the public official, Mr. So-and-so, what is the need for this legislation? I couldn't believe a person from the private sector, one of those really powerful guys, forced himself into, not forced, by that I mean the particular official didn't want to meet at a particular time. Yeah. But this particular powerful person in the private sector said, well, look, I'm going to England today. I have to see you today. So we went and sat in this meeting, and this official had to explain to this person in the private sector what is the need for this legislation. To me, a person from the private sector shouldn't do that. Another thing I can tell you, a lot of this legislation which is passed in Cayman is not even drafted in the AG's chambers. It is drafted in the private law firms. I can tell you that I used to go to meetings. I can't tell you which particular legislation and which particular firm it was. We were invited to go to a particular law firm so that we could write a particular law. Where I came from, Sabrina, they wanted to make sure that every time when government is writing legislation, government must be seen to be in charge. They didn't appoint, for example, a legislation committee where the chairperson is from the private sector. But in the Cayman Islands, they do that all the time because their feeling in that particular government was that as government, we want to consult, but we want to be seen to be always in charge. Now, let me mention another thing. You stop me when you think I've gone too far. There's an issue about discrimination. In the area of immigration and employment. Mm-hmm. Dr. Steve has been saying this for years and years. He pointed out the provision in section 11.4 of the Constitution, which says that the government can discriminate in the area of employment, discriminate in favor of Caymanians. It can do so. Okay? But for a long time, the Attorney General never, ever validated that view. Never did. But I congratulate the people in Cayman because they kept, once Dr. Steve made that observation way back in 2018, I think, people started now learning about it and calling for it and calling for it and calling for it. Finally, the Attorney General has now said, yes, you can discriminate in favor of Caymanians in relation to employment. I would have loved the Attorney General to have validated that
a long time ago,
that far back. Yeah, because to me, it just shows me that he really wasn't working together with the people in the Cayman Islands. And this is a very big problem in Cayman, Sabrina, because we tend to do things when we tend to shut the door once the horse has bolted.
Through the gate, too late.
Too late. Look at, for example, the issue of mortgages. I just digress a little bit. The issue of mortgages, again, Dr. Steve has been pointing out for years to say, look, what we have in the Cayman Islands are not true mortgages as used in England, in Canada, and so on. They are what are called demand loans. That is why it is very easy. You don't pay for 3 months. They can come and possess it. Mm-hmm. In other countries, the mortgages are much better secured. I was working with a certain MP, I won't call his name, before he became a minister, to try and get Parliament to appoint a committee and to report within 6 months about mortgages so that people could be protected. Mm-hmm. This was in 2018. We put together the resolution, and he tried to put the resolution through, and they couldn't put it through. And yet people were losing their homes. Like there was this person who lost his home very publicly. And then after he lost the home, it was sold 3 or 4 months later for about 4 times the price, 3 or 4 times the price.
I remember that.
And yet they never, and they never did anything about it. What they did is just to kill it. They said, oh, take it to the Law Reform Commission. But now I understand the bill has been done. But this is how many houses have been lost during this time.
Yeah, there have been quite a few.
The problem is that in Cayman, because of too much pull from the private sector, these things are dealt with very, very late. Look at even the very issue of immigration. Why they had announced 20 years ago, Mr. McCarthy announced 20 years ago, he said, look, we are going to introduce rollover in government. Within a few weeks, that was undone. Okay? Within a few weeks, that was undone. And then after they undid it, when did they come back to it? 21 years later. That's when they come back to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, you can't do it that way. Well, let me let you go. I could call later if I find that I've got so much
So
that
I can
has to
tell.
be said.
Well, people are asking,
yeah,
especially Cameron. Well, I knew you had
yeah.
actually told us a story because there was a warrant out for you with some property
Oh,
and
yeah.
something. He's asking whether or not this warrant is still out for you and why you can't come home. And there was another statement made as well by Damian Charles, speaking facts and the truth will get you hated. That's true. But yes, that was Cameron trying to find out whether or not this warrant was still out against you and why won't you come home?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I really thank people in Cayman who are very kind towards me and who like to share views. Sometimes they send me a message. Can you just repeat something you said on the radio? And so I really love that. It's like, for example, when Roy Boden's latest book came out, I didn't have to buy it. A friend of mine from Cayman bought it and sent it to me. But about the warrant, as far as I'm aware, it is still out there for my arrest, but I'm in court on the by Zoom on the 2nd of December, not to review the warrant, but to go to court because this other person now has said that there should be a restraining order against me. There should be a restraining order in addition to the arrest warrant, that there should be a restraining order. You know what they do with a restraining order? They say you can't approach this person, you can't come within 200 yards of them and this and that and so on. So I'm going to court. Initially, you see, the court, they had applied to go to court so that it could be issued without me being called in to defend myself.
Okay.
But the judge said, no, it is a very serious order you are asking for. That's not fair. There's no urgency about it. In any case, this person is outside the country. I want him to have a chance to come and
defend himself.
So to defend himself. So on the 2nd of December, I'm in court. And basically the point I want to make in court on the day is simply that this person actually is the person who harassed me because they were sending me bills I didn't owe for 18 months. And under the law, you can't do that. That constitutes harassment. It doesn't have to be accompanied by physical fear of harm. But if you just keep sending somebody things and then they tell you, please don't send them to me, you don't owe me, I don't owe you this, that is harassment. Okay. And on top of that, I lost a tenant who left because the way they got to know it was in dispute, and then they sent a surveyor to come and evaluate it to try and sell it, and my tenants felt very uncomfortable, so they left. So I've got a counterclaim against this person for the loss of it, because under the law, it does allow you to do that. But so that's what the thing is. Well, coming home, I will come home right now. There are so many things I plan to do. I am hoping that I can come and teach some courses in the Cayman Islands regarding the legislative process, judicial review, to help people, understand how judicial review works and how they can deal with government institutions sometimes which violate their rights. But that's what it is. But otherwise, I thank you, Sabrina, for the time.
Thank you for your time and for, again, always sharing your knowledge. The feedback that we have gotten is always in support of you and saying that you're speaking facts. But before, to the best of my knowledge, we're getting more persons coming out of their shells right now and being more open, and this space has created that, accommodating persons to be more open, which is probably why the public was not aware of all of the things that we're sharing here, in how operationally it could impact everyday citizens, how we have been able to talk, break things down. And as Danny kept saying, keep talking, even though the more you speak and it's facts, it gets you hated. And those are some of the downers in living in a small island development state. But you honestly just have to be strong, remain focused, and know that the universe will create that environment where one day everything that you've been saying will all make sense, which is why I can understand why Jenny is saying keep talking, because people are listening.
If you let me cover one other point. It is related to immigration as well, but something that I hope that the public can become more sensitive. You know that even if this legislation is passed, that will only deal with maybe about. Even if it's passed if it is passed as is, they'll achieve very little. But even if they pass it with some of these improvements which have been requested, which we discussed earlier, even if that is done, that will only be 50% of the job. Okay? Because the other half of it, it has to do with the attitudes of people who will implement this thing. Now, let's talk, for example, about the duty to train Caymanians. What is the new policy? I don't know if it's in the bill or not, but what Minister Miles said was, look, we want to ensure that the contracts of people in government who can train, they include a clause which says that you've got a duty to train. Sabrina, do you really think that the failure to train Caymanians has been because there's been no clauses? Because there's no clause? First of all, in any job, if you are working, first of all, most contracts say that we are employing a person called X, and he will do job A, B, C, and any other duties which are assigned by the head of department. Yeah, there's always that omnibus clause at the very end to ensure that, if in case something else comes up, which comes within the scope of the job, it can be done. So those kinds of contracts have already always existed.
They're already there.
Why weren't they being used?
Exactly.
So
and you know why? Because the people don't have to do it.
Well, exactly. You see, because even the way it is, a chief officer right now can tell a head of department, we've got a Caymanian who has joined your department. We are trying to see if we can move him up and so on. Please, can you start giving him some training, give me some reports, and then we can proceed like that. That doesn't even need a contract.
Exactly.
It can be done. Let me give you the example which I had in the place I used to work. A Caymanian came there to come and learn how to write laws. And at that time, I hadn't trained anybody for a long time. So I asked my head of department, which I remain nameless, I said, can you give me this Caymanian to train? You know what the head of department said? What? She said, no. You can't train anybody.
Why?
First of all, that was the first time I was now being accused of not being competent in my jobs.
Okay.
So she told me, she said, well, your drafts are not very good and therefore you haven't reached the level where you can train somebody.
But
by that time, Sabrina, I was already teaching online part-time Canadian lawyers who are learning to write legislation at a university based in Calgary, Alberta. In the 90s, I used to go to Rome at the Institute of Development Law, which was an English-speaking institute which hosted students from the Cayman Islands and from Africa and from Asia to teach them legal drafting. I used to go there like for a week to teach a segment on the course. I have 24 peer-reviewed papers, some of them published in the University of Oxford in England, University of London, South Africa, and so on, about the law, about legislative drafting, interpretation, and so on. I worked for the Commonwealth Secretariat. I was recruited from London and then fielded to Guyana, and that's how I came to the Caribbean. I can keep going about this. And right now, for example, I'm an associate editor of The Loophole. The Loophole is a journal of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Council, a journal of Legislative Council for the entire Commonwealth. And I've been doing that for the last about 10 years. My editor-in-chief is based in Ottawa, Canada, and so forth. And we edit articles from legislative experts from all over the world to decide whether they should be published.
So stick a pin.
I was being told by the...
Stick a pin. Why you feel they stopped you? Is it because you were going to be training a local? Or
yes,
there was just...
I was going to be training a local. They wanted to keep her down. Okay, they just wanted to keep her down. And then they said, the head of department said, before we start training this Caymanian, she must go and get a master's in legislative drafting. The chief officer at the time, I won't call the name. She's no longer there as chief officer. She's doing some other bigger and better job. She said, well, but look, why don't you allow her to start training now? Yes, if you want her to get a master's, yes, we will arrange for that. Can go for a master's. And to be fair, that overall boss is a Jamaican, a status holder. That was a status holder who had a good attitude. And this head of department refused. And then what they did at that point, they took this particular person. She was based in the building in Anderson Square where we used to be. But just to frustrate her, they moved her from an office there. They gave her an office at Truman Borden's law school. How can you bring somebody who wants to learn how to draft legislation, then you put them in an office where they won't have access to people who can train them? But they did it that really
setting them up to fail.
Setting them up to fail. I mean, I can tell you about another lawyer who came into the portfolio of legal affairs, wanted to join, but they ended up sending them to another institution to work alone when they had no experience. And that was another lawyer they were trying to frustrate.
Another Caymanian lawyer?
To me, yes, another another Caymanian lawyer. Look, and this one was in litigation. The first one I'm talking about was trying to learn how to write legislation. This other one wanted to be in litigation. And what they did is, rather than keep them within the portfolio of legal affairs so that they can be trained and learn the ropes and so on, they found some job for them to do in another institute. They were called a legal advisor for that institute, but they had no library. They had nobody to train them. They had no experience. It was just to be able to get rid of them. So do you see, those things are things which, in my view, even the deputy governor should have intervened. They do not need legislation. There are things which, if you've got the attitude to say, yes, I want my local people to be trained, then they should be trained. Now, look, I love Deputy Governor, and I want to go criticizing him in a heavy way on your show. But let me tell you one thing he did one time. They asked him, they said, why is it that you are using government money to train expatriates? They asked the Deputy Governor publicly. You know what the answer of the Deputy Governor was? He said, I can't stop anybody from being trained. That's when I said there is no vision then in Cayman. I can tell you, Sabrina, there was one person again in my portfolio who was from outside Cayman. They applied for a job. Caymanians also applied. They ended up giving it to that foreigner, but that foreigner was actually less qualified than the Caymanians who applied. But she was on very good terms with the person who was principally in charge of the interview. But then they told her, they said, okay, you have been very lucky. We have given you this job, but you have to improve your qualifications, because next time when it is advertised, we don't guarantee that it won't go to a Caymanian. Then she decided to retrain. Do you know who paid for the retraining? The Cayman government.
Oh, wow.
They paid for it. So you see, in the country I came from, it was made very clear: an expatriate comes to do the job and to train people. Doesn't come to Cayman so that they can, to the local government so that they can learn. I can talk also about, you remember the chief fire officer, the one who was there last time, the British guy. That man had only 3 O levels. If they had applied the criteria for the job, they should never have given him the job.
What you say? Repeat that again. I didn't hear what you said.
Okay. The last chief fire officer, the British chief fire officer who used to be there before the current one.
Yes.
That person had only 3 O levels. He didn't have a university degree. And yet that job required somebody with at least a degree in fire science or something like that. But they appointed him because he was from the UK, and they said, oh, he has some experience in training. But you know what happened when he came? When he came, he is the one who was going for these courses and the seminars and so on. He was training himself. And then I used to go on crosstalk with Woody Da Costa once I had gotten into this talk stuff, and we started talking about that, and to say, why is it that you set some requirements? These are the minimum things that are required. Okay, these are the things that are required. And then you say, okay, but they won't apply to the British person, but they will apply to a Caymanian. At that time, they already had Caymanians in the office there who had a master's in fire science and experience. And it only took until we made an issue of it. Other people made an issue.
Yes.
The Honorable Bernie Bush made an issue of it.
Yes, he was allowed. Yep.
All these things, you see, are things which, even if you pass the law, if this kind of attitude is going to proceed, there's no way it's going to happen. Another case, you remember the case in, I think it was in the Ministry or Department of Education. They wanted a director of human resources. Okay? A director of human resources. That director of human resources, they advertised they needed somebody with a master's degree. They needed somebody with at least 10 years experience. 2 Caymanians with those experiences, with that level of experience applied. Do you know who they appointed? They appointed a non-Caymanian, non-PR holder from one of these so-called developed countries who only had a diploma, which in a British system is like an associate degree. And it became public, that case. And one of the Caymanians actually tried to begin a judicial review, but ultimately that judicial review was settled. I don't know how. But do you know who signed off on that appointment of somebody who was not qualified for the job?
Who?
Deputy Governor Franz Madison. He's the one who signed off on it.
But how do we know, not taking up for him, please, again, so that people will understand the operational arm, because I was going to ask this general question. Remember now, members of parliament, the elected arm, does not interfere with the employment of staff, which is why former MP Berna Bush got in problems, right? Okay, we can't get involved. But who is responsible for vetting these things? Like what you said in regards to the former fire chief, with only 3 levels, and compared to all of the local talent that we've had there that came up with more passes, more than likely, more qualified. But it says something is wrong with the operational arm, and even in their glass ceilings. So who's signing off, as you rightfully say, may not have been given the total picture either. I'm quite sure he's not going to go through the resume, see all of that. That's why he trusts his staff. Okay.
You see, the way it works under the Public Service Management Law, which I helped to write because it was written originally by a consultant from Australia, but I was the legislative counsel who was given the task of passing it through, making sure that it meets with certain requirements. That law says, for example, in a ministry, that in a ministry, the chief officer sets out what the requirements of the job are, the job description.
Yeah, the job description.
And all those details.
With the HR manager and
with the HR managers, they set those, and then when they set them, and then it is advertised. Once it is advertised, there's an interview committee, an interview panel, which sits down, and they have got this table where they mark the points and this and that and so on. And then after that, they take that report and take it to the chief officer, because the chief officer under the Public Service Management Law is the one who appoints. And generally speaking, the chief officer is supposed to sign off on it unless there are some serious problems. It's because the idea of that law was to ensure that, you don't just give the chief officer, the individual, like to just appoint anybody, but you want it to be part of the system. And so despite all that, like in this particular case, I understand it did go through all that, but somehow at the end of the day, they appointed that person despite the fact that they didn't meet the qualifications. The case, for example, of the director of human resources, that one was particularly bad because that one became public, because the director of human resources is supposed to be appointed by the chief officer in accordance with the procedure that I have described, right? But what happened in that particular case is that the chief officer in the ministry took the recommendations of the panel, which I believe had recommended one of the 2 Caymanians, and he took it to the deputy governor. And the deputy governor is the one who signed off on the appointment of this person who was not qualified. Now, one of the problems with that, apart from the fact that this person was not qualified, the deputy governor under the Public Service Management Law appoints the chief officers. He doesn't appoint officers who are lower than that. Like I've said, it is the chief officer who's supposed to do that. So clearly, clearly the deputy governor had an interest in it. There's also another case, you remember, in Department of Lands and Survey. There was a Caymanian lady there who was like a deputy registrar, something like that, but they didn't have a law degree. But they'd been there for a very, very long time, and they worked for quite a while. And then what happened, was that there was, it turned out to be a conspiracy because it was made public. They decided that they were going to change the job description for that to require a law degree.
Who is they?
And once well, the whole system in the Ministry of Lands.
Okay.
They changed the requirements that you needed a law degree to be a deputy registrar. Okay, so after they changed it, now this lady didn't qualify. So eventually she was eased out of the job. They appointed somebody, I think from Jamaica or somewhere there.
So where is the grit of our Caymanians for fighting? I understand everything. And as some comments we see it, this is heavy, sad to listen to. You can see Tartarian putting up there. Yeah. Why are we not fighting back for this? Why aren't we, or is it because they're scared of losing their job? Are they scared to be a me because we speak up and it's not liked? Or is there a total different rules of the game with what's happening? I know you've been here a while. You may have heard. It's not who you know, but who know you. It's not who know you, but who you know. Yeah, whatever. However you twist it. And it's sad because what you have actually described here today is pretty much, and you would think some of those positions, be it status holders or Caymanian, they're doing that towards their own Caymanians. What is it? Because you got to be in a certain league? Is it because you got to be in a certain club? Why certain people don't move? And like what you've described, job descriptions change to get Caymanians out of positions, making them feel less. These are Caymanians that are doing this to one another in the civil service as you are describing.
Exactly. Look at that particular lady. Okay. In other governments, what they would do in a case like that, if they have decided we need a degree holder for this job, they would tell the lady, you are a Caymanian, but in a couple of years, you won't be able to hold on to this job unless you get a degree. So we are ready to sponsor you to be able to go to Truman Borden and study, and we'll give you 4 or 5 years for you to study. After that, if you succeed, then you stay. But if you don't succeed, then I'm sorry, then we have to give it to somebody else. You give them that opportunity to qualify as you assist them. But they didn't do that. And then, when this issue again became public, it did become public and it was in the paper. Then the deputy governor was asked, why did you allow this to happen? The deputy governor issued a statement to say he was satisfied that there was nothing improper in the particular case.
Okay, there. That says it. That says it all. That says it.
That says it. That's why I keep saying that, you see, so long as that kind of attitude continues, even the legislation won't be enough to be able to deal with it. And I congratulate people in Cayman because they keep talking. This immigration matter, for example, has only come to a head this time again because people really talked about it. The politicians, I know that we're trying to avoid talking about it, and this is what has to be done. So I'm just sensitizing people to the fact that yes, even if the law is passed in a form which we by and large would be happy with, you need some policy to support it. Let me tell you a conversation I had with O.C. Connor on his show, because he raised the same issue that you raised a little earlier on, which is that, the Honorable Bernie Bush got into problems because he got involved in appointment. Now, as a short aside, I understand the public were on the side of Bernie Bush in that case, notwithstanding that, yes, he had overstepped his bound. And the reason they were on their side, and I got this from key sources in Cayman, because they said, you people, when you want to keep a Caymanian down, you want to keep with the rules.
Oh, Lord.
But when you want to appoint your own people, okay, from Jamaica, from the UK, and so on, you don't care about the rules. So I understand the public actually was on the side of Bernie, right? What was I going to go to and so on? What was I've lost my train of thought now.
We were just I don't know where you were going next, but we were just talking about overall where persons, feel, and I'm getting some comments that they've lost the will to fight. Why is that? And some are saying,
okay, yeah,
the will to fight, and when go ahead. Since it's come back.
It has come to me. Yeah, it has come back, yeah. You see, I had this chat with O.C. Connor because the same issue arose about, but politicians don't appoint. And that is correct. In fact, under the Public Service Management Law, there's even a section Yeah, you can't do that. There's a clear separation between the politicians and the thing. But what I told OC, I said, OC, it is very frustrating for politicians. People come to them, oh, Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so, I need a job in the ABC, and the politicians say, well, but you see, we don't appoint. So I told him, I said, look, and then when they go to the deputy governor, then the deputy governor says, oh, no, but you see, you can't interfere with my job, which is correct in terms of appointment. So I told OC, I said, you know what you can do is this. You can, as the politicians, as cabinet, you can sit down and say, you know what? We want to set certain targets as to how Caymanians are going to be promoted in the various places. But we want to ensure that as they are being promoted, they are qualified. We want you, Mr. Deputy Governor, you draw a program for Caymanization of as many positions as possible. You tell us how much money you need for training, and you just give us a whole program about how you implement that. We won't tell you who to appoint, but we want to look at your suggestions and approve a plan for the training of Caymanians. And then after that, we will approve the plan. We as politicians will set the targets, and then we will give you the money that is necessary for you to be able to train people. And then you will report to us every 6 months or every year as to how you are implementing that program. That way, we are not interfering with who you appoint.
But the fingers on the pulse to navigate, right?
Exactly. We have decided the policy and set the targets, and then you will meet those targets and make individual decisions. But that was never taken up. And that's how you marry. That's how you ensure the politicians are doing what they're supposed to do, but without impinging upon the functions of the deputy governor.
Correct.
Okay. So all those are the things which needs to be done. And I think the government should be addressing all these issues together with the legislative program that they're putting together.
Sounds like a lot of work from the politician standpoint when you actually have a vehicle that may not be going based on the type engine that you actually come with. And that is where pace, and I know that different strategies, different tools want to be reintroduced or introduced actually in order to make the civil service move faster at pace, be more efficient. And we just have to give them time is all I can say. But having lived through it, I'm telling you, it is like pushing water uphill.
And you are right about that, because I have been in that system. You see, and people should continue listening to Roy Borden. Roy Borden says that one of the problems that Cayman is lacking, it's lacking an ideological direction. What do you want to achieve? Roy Borden, many years ago, I read this in his first book. He had suggested to say, you know what, we shouldn't have a land tenure system which gives absolute title. Okay, because even in England, you don't get absolute title, generally speaking. That's why in England, when they talk about somebody who holds land, they say you are a tenant for life, a tenant, because you are a tenant of the crown. Even when you buy it. Now,
because you're paying taxes. Yeah, you're paying taxes.
Exactly. But in Cayman, when you buy land, it is yours. And it is finished. And Roy Borden said, you know what, many years ago, don't give absolute title. Have a system similar to the one they have in England. And they called him a communist, and people know the story about how he was blacklisted. In the end, they ended up in a car shop selling cars and that kind of thing, and building and so on, when somebody was a qualified teacher. And today, the same Roy Borden, who was ignored at that time, the same Roy Borden is telling you, get an ideological direction. And what I've tried to do in our call is to say the ideological direction should be, you should decide, we are not going to train expatriates using government money. An expatriate can go to a local seminar, for a day or two because they are working there and so on, but not to spend big money to train an expatriate. There should be a policy regarding that. There should be a policy regarding a lot of things and targets set. Without targets, you can keep talking. You will never be sure whatever is going to happen. You know what, if I had a chance, I would love to take somebody like some of these people I've mentioned who I don't think have got an ideological direction. Take them to the country where I came from. how we did after independence. Although Cayman is not independent, but really it's a self-governing territory. It should do 75% of what we were doing. Because there it was very, very clear. You come in, an expatriate comes in, there are targets. Me, for example, I became a head of department after 10 years. I went to England after I got qualified back in Zambia, where I come from. I qualified, I was called to the bar. And then I went to England for 5 months at an institute, which is now part of the Institute of, part of the University of London. I studied legislative drafting, treaty drafting. I went back home. And then I came to Canada for 2.5 years to get a Master of Laws in legislation. And after I finished, I went back home. If you put together my training together with my experience, that was 10 years. I was appointed head of legislative drafting. If they had said that, well, you are going to compete with people from England and from Nigeria, I was never going to get the job. But the policy of the government was, you are now qualified. You've been doing this in the office for 7 years. You've been trained for a total of 3 years outside the country. You can do the job. They gave me the job. In Cayman, people need to learn that. I know somebody in the portfolio in one country, one ministry, let us just call it a ministry, who has been in one job, a Caymanian, indigenous Caymanian, in one job for 17 years. They have never even gotten an increment of $1. They've gotten these increments, which everybody has gotten.
Cost of living.
But they have never got, no promotion for 17 years, and not even like when that person finished her master's, they should have said, okay, fine, we'll give you at least $500 more. Because that's what they used to do where I came from. Where I came from, if you went to study for a master's, when you came back, even if they didn't promote you immediately, they would give you like a $500 increment to show you that we now appreciate that you can add more to the department. This person has been there for 17 years to this day, no promotion, not an increment. And those things, actually, the deputy governor, in that particular case, the deputy governor has been aware of it. Nothing has ever happened. What should happen in some of these cases?
Do you know what that's doing to that person's morale?
And I give, that's somebody I count as one of my friends. That person is resilient. And they keep saying, well, here I am. I've got a daughter now. She's finished university and this and that and so forth. It really kills people. And so when you hear me, Sabrina, sometimes get passionate about this, and yet I'm not even a Caymanian, it's because friends of mine, I've seen this. I went to Truman Boarding Law School one time, and we were having a function there. A Caymanian lady, it's like when I went over to her and we started talking, that's when she gushed out. She said, Mr. Billy, my daughter applied for my granddaughter, it was a granddaughter. My granddaughter applied for a job. She's qualified for a job, but they've given it to a Caymanian. I mean, and I didn't speak much to that lady. It was just I approached her at a time when the frustration came out. And those are things which I have seen. I think it will always help for Jamaicans, Caymanians, and so on to live together in harmony. If Caymanians can understand, this is where I began. If Caymanians can say, yes, we are in charge of our country, we are the majority in the workforce, we are the majority in the society, you will find that Caymanians will be even more welcoming than they are now. Sometimes when you see Caymanians really appear like they are being unreasonable, it's because they've been trying to be welcoming, but they've in the end paid the price.
Yeah.
Sabrina Turner, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Very, very
you
much.
got everybody going
soon.
today. Yes, definitely. Well, at least we can tell my Cameron that you had credit. So there we go. Thank you so much.
Well, and I thank everybody who listened in. And
the
so
feedback has been phenomenal.
Going.
And yeah, thank you so much. But keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
You take care.
Thanks. Likewise. I see where Sylvia is asking for a kaboom. This is sobering, and it came off of the heels of exactly what we wanted to get into. And I totally understand what has been happening. But at the end of the day, you heard what the caller said. When you have been so accommodating under such, you have to call this what it is, mental, emotional abuse, just trying to survive in the environment, doing the best you can, and the system appears to actually be against you. That is resilience. But again, what that does to somebody's mental psyche, oh my God. This commenter says the mistreatment some politicians face in office is similar to what lower level staff deal with in government. Some people clearly have their own agendas. Well, that came out here in a number of forms, and thank you for sharing that. But it is that environment seems more toxic than it is healthy, to be honest. And it's sad because these are some of the very same persons, based on the number of examples shared by Mr. Balika, that are writing the very same policies that is going to chart the future of the Cayman Islands. So Damien says, do you know what that does to children and future Caymanians' morale? Yes, Damien, you are quite right. I mean, you're pretty much physically drained, mentally drained once you finish a day in an environment like that. Damien also says, then what makes them look down on us because they feel superior and entitled over that narrative? People who speak up and speak out here in the Cayman Islands, be it civil servant or just a common member of society, is always silenced in some way. The system always ends up designing against them, pretty much keeps them down because you're speaking facts, you're speaking from the truth. And that hurts, like what the caller said in regards to certain sectors. And because we don't band together and stand strong in unity, we end up getting many a times walked on, stepped on, spat on by our very own. And it's pretty sad. It's pretty sad that we have ended up being a society like that. Miss Sabrina, I'd love to hear how mistreatment challenged you, how you handled it, and whether it affected your mental health. I really could be honest with you. I'm still coming to grips with the reality of what I suffered, to be honest with you. How I dealt with it many a times, I had to remain focused, and that was where I channeled all of my energy and on those who I knew were very supportive of me. Now, that goes on both sides. What I'm speaking to based on this comment is not only the elected arm, my peers, I'm also speaking about the operational arm because I had it twofold. And this is not crying baby. I've gotten over. I'm a big girl. Look at where I am today. And I thank God for this opportunity. Like I said, I don't know how the puzzle will fit together at the end of the day, but it has to be a purpose, a meaning for why I'm actually having to go through here. Each day, I'm coming with the realization, not only from the political side of what I've endured, but also from the operational arm. But from the operational context, there's a lot of stuff that was there, a lot of vision. And it was funny that the caller said about politicians need to have this ideological perspective, politicians' ideology. Even though I didn't run in 2021 with a party, when I was appointed as the minister and I got an idea of the role and what it entailed, I did have the vision. The resources just weren't there. And then it felt like I was speaking a different language. And then when I realized that it looks as though the environment was against me, not only by a few in the political arm, but also in the operational arm, the cards were stacked against me. I focused my attention then on the one ministry, God bless Home Affairs, that really holistically embraced me 100%. When I was tasked with that or given that role. And I focused on where I could see me getting huge results. That's not to say that I didn't get it in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, but the terrain there was totally different. It was toxic, to say the least. That's not by everyone. That was just a few. But I know Cameron will say, well, call names, whatever. No, that's water under the bridge. I just wish the current minister of health best of luck, because at the end of the day, unless the atmosphere in there changed, she dare not challenge certain members of staff in there, and worse, about pace. And if she's just going to ride the wave, God be with us. But again, it looks as though the camaraderie that is happening now on the surface from what we're seeing outside is a little less fragmented. than what we had. And remember, it was a different time as well, opening up and COVID and all that sort of stuff. But let me tell you something. I empathize with the civil servants who are muzzled and is going through this type of treatment. Thank God I had the opportunity to do what I did. And I did it with the best of my ability. And I want to publicly thank all of those staff who are not even there right now, and some have gone, for supporting me in seeing the vision. And that's also in the private sector as well. But again, with the size of our community, people were scared to talk. People were scared to even support me publicly because remember, I'm disposable. Every 3 years, every 4 years, they vote you out. And that is riding the wave. Instead of standing for something, you just go with the flow and you'll talk up with the next member, only hoping that they will get back in. It's sad because at some point we're going to have to stand for something. And I think we're at the precipice right now where Caymanians are so angry with everything that is happening that in where we should be banding closer together, it's like we're taking our frustrations out on the expatriates. Not to tell you that they don't have problems, or not to tell you that we have not been exploited, but based on the picture that was shared here and painted by so many times, even those who contribute to this space, a lot of this we're actually inflicting on ourselves. And unless we come together as one, dog eat our supper. But getting back to the fact of today, when it comes to the amendments, people are asking, especially domestics are asking to have their child or children join them here in the Cayman Islands. If your income currently now, the work permits, your salary right now, the current legislation or the rules for dependents says that you need to have an income of $3,500 per month for one dependent. And for each additional dependent, you need to show an additional $500 for each additional dependent. Now, you also got to be the biological parent or it could be adopted or step parent of that child. In the case where you do not have an income per month currently of $3,500, be it combined with your spouse, and that spouse is the father of the child, chances are your application is not going to be approved. Even with what is being proposed, the outline draft bill that we have, it raises the income threshold of $4,500 a month. That is the basic income that you working here would have to be made to even be considered to have a dependent included on your work permit. And then for each additional dependent, you would have to prove an additional $750 per additional dependent. So what was $3,500 as an income has now being proposed as $4,500 as an income. And for each additional dependent, what was $500, what is now being proposed is $750. So let's just do a scenario. I'm a domestic helper. I'm making $1,800 a month, $1,500 a month, based on the situation that happened in my country. I want my minor child under the age of 18 to join me here. I still got maybe a year, 2 years left of my rollover, 5 years left, whatever amount. My rollover is not ended. But I'm asking whether or not, if my sister is also here or brother is also here, can we combine our incomes? The answer is no. No. The application is looking at solely the income of the applicant. And in this particular case, the mother of that child. Now, if there is a father in the life of that child, and let's say both parents are here and they're married, or whether or not they're not married, the father then would have to prove DNA that that child is theirs, and they would have to show proof of their income And the board then will consider whether or not they will approve that application. Some of the things that the board has to look at, of course, the income for the holder, the primary caregiver. Again, $3,500 now, it's going to move to $4,500. They're going to look at whether or not they have enough for medical insurance coverage, where they're staying based on the age of the child. They will more than likely have to attend private school. You're going to have to do a breakdown of your monthly expenses. Sometimes, if you have a good employer and the employer says, well, I will give housing or they're living here for them, but this is still their base income. Again, that's another thing for the board to take into consideration. But bearing in mind, the board is not going to consider, let's say, an application where clearly the salary is under $3,500. And in doing so, in making that application, don't think that you're going to be crafty now to say that this is how much I'm making, because they can ask for proof of payment. Normally, employers do direct deposits, or if there should be some evidence of what the income is for you to determine, for the board to determine whether or not you're allowed to have a dependent. But this thing of pooling monies together, because I have a cousin who's also here, or I have a brother or a sister who's also here, and we live together in the same home, and because that's their niece or nephew or their blood from back in Jamaica, they will help out because of the situation. No, you're wasting your money. You're wasting your money. If there is a case where you're a single parent and the father is not even in the life, the board is only going to look at the income of the holder of that work permit. They're not going to take into consideration anybody else's income. So I know how hard that is under the circumstances, but you got to look at your own personal situation, because we all, even as Caymanians, know it is not cheap to live here, even though the situation, and I'm trying to be as respectful and understanding as a parent as I can in regards to this unfortunate situation. But let me be abundantly clear. When it comes to the board making those decisions, they have to do it in accordance to the regulations and what is in the substantive law, meaning it either is black or it's white, unless there's some general provisions for a short period of time that under the situation that Jamaica, for example, has found themselves in, that the government will say, oh, we will allow certain people to come here for 3 months, 6 months, da-da-da-da-da. That is not the case. That has not happened. But unless something like that happens where they will give consideration, that's the only how, if you're not making the minimum income of at least $4,500 per month, that you should consider applying for a permanent, a dependent child, or in some cases, then even if it's a spouse, because they're going to ask that question. And it's unfortunate because it's only a certain sector of these persons that are going to be heavily impacted by that. And those are your domestic helpers, persons in the hospitality, maybe even some persons based in the construction industry as well. And at the end of the day, employees are going to have a real conversations with themselves, because I know from the human impact of it, you would say, well, I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that my child goes to the private school, to make sure that they have food. But right now, the infrastructure where they're living in Jamaica is just not there. They don't have a house. I am here. I can't speak. I can't speak on behalf of the government. I'm just here to let you know what legislation is in place right now. And pretty much the mere fact that this income threshold has risen or is proposed to be risen to $4,500, that even more puts you out of the loop for being eligible for dependents if your salary does not even go to $1,800. Even if you have a monthly income of $2,000 as a domestic helper, you still would not be eligible to apply for this. But again, no one is stopping you from making an application. I'm just here to answer the questions that has been posed, and this thing about whether or not my sister or my other family member that's working in the Cayman Islands, if we combine our incomes because we're staying together, whether or not immigration will take that into consideration. The answer is no. That is not how it is aligned, because the primary caregiver of that child is for the case in the example that I'm given, is the mother. Who has legal custody of the child? Who's the next of kin? It would be the mother. And I said, there are many single parents who have a lot of these children and they find themselves in this situation. That's putting an additional strain as well, possibly on your employer. Not to say that they're not empathetic of your situation, but then if they're already paying you an agreed salary and your salary isn't going the mileage that it should be going to fit your situation, then both employer, employee need to have a talk, separate and apart. But looking at the mean immigration law, if the salary right now is not $3,500 a month, and there's not a joint income that would make it more than $3,000, then your application is already on the back foot before it is submitted. So I just want to remove that question as to whether or not, if there's an auntie here or a cousin here and they all know what happened in Jamaica, whether or not my child or children would be allowed to come here and reside with me as a work permit dependent. No, the basics of this is that, unfortunately, gardeners, lower skilled persons where the income just does not meet this threshold, that's sending a large signal to you that they can't accommodate your dependents if you do not meet the income threshold as it is. So I'm hoping that I made it clear from that aspect, and you don't feel that, it's harsh, but there's going to have to be some hard conversations that are going to be had with yourselves. And it's going to probably be some very sad nights, a lot of tears going to be shed with you making that decision. Because I know as a parent myself, it cannot be easy. You coming to another man's country to make a living for yourself. Remember, Jamaica was hit, yes, by Melissa, but we also have the Philippines that was also devastated and as well. So we have to look at it holistically, and we are hearing our Caymanians saying that our schools, please turn down whatever you have on in the background for me, please, that our schools is already at capacity. We know that daycare and childcare, should you be working, is that a case? Are you working for a boss where when the child comes out of school, or based on this, what if the child is not even of school age? Are you going to have a helper home to take care of that kid? Or is your employer going to allow you to have that child with you at work? There are a lot of things at play. What if you're taking care of someone who is bedridden? Will your situation then be placed where focus is given on your child and not your job? This is hard to have the conversation, but it's really real. Good evening, caller. You're live on Sabrina Speaks. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Sabrina. A question on the matter of employers and employees. Someone was asking asking a question. What about if, as for applying for papers, if somebody like applying additional dependents, if just for instance a Caymanian can sponsor a child, is that still, because they said or like
put your phone closer to your mouth because you're going in and out unless you're using a headpiece.
No, I don't know. Just don't seem to get a problem. When they were asking the question, for instance, if like someone came from another jurisdiction, call no name, people, and just say Tom Jones is a Caymanian and that's your employer.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Jones sponsored that child that your employees now bringing to that wants to bring to the island. Can they sponsor that child?
They can, as a part of whatever application that applicant is applying for, whatever assistance an employer may want to add to strengthen the application, they can provide proof by way of a letter, maybe sworn affidavit, for the board to take into consideration. But just an outright yes or no, I can't answer that because it's based on consideration by the board. But stick a pin. What if the relationship is broken down before the person's term limit is over, for example? You understand?
Yeah.
Where would that, which is why the board does not get into things like that. Based on the person's income is where they make their decision off. If it's a husband and wife, then they will consider both salaries combined. But it is in every applicant's best interest to not make an application that cannot be borne responsibly or solely only on what their income is, because the board does not have to consider any additional subsidiary.
Yeah, okay, but that's a good answer, because that's exactly what I told the person. I says I don't think that as an employee, he can sponsor a child unless he's going to adopt the child. He would have to.
And then that's giving up parental rights. And again, that's a shortcut through the system. But at the end of the day, what I want to take away from this conversation is that, be it a permanent resident dependent, be it a work permit dependent, the board's mandate is to look at, yes, a lot of factors, but it's just not only the income. It's looking at rent. It's looking at cost of food. It's looking at private school, possibly medical insurance, and all of that sort of stuff is what they're tasked with looking at. And that should be borne on the sole salary of the applicant.
The employee.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I told him too, but I just want to make sure if I was on the same page.
You are.
Okay, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
You're welcome, my love. There you go. I'm going to call back that because we had another caller calling in. And yeah, I know that we are a given and we're a kind society, but that is why right now there is so much discontent in our country, because people are saying we have been so nice for so long that we have really messed it up for ourselves and we can't do any more. And I know sometimes the conversation may be hard to have. Well, if you can't take how we're doing it here, then go back home. That sounds hard. That sounds hard. But I can understand in one way now, where if your salary is only $2,000 and our laws say you have to be $3,500 to have a dependent, why push the limits? Nothing wrong with you fighting for your rights, but the laws of the Cayman Islands says you need to have a basic income of your own, not with any friend, not with any brother, not with any sister or niece or cousin. It's what your income is on your own. You shouldn't be trying to push the limit. And that is where I'm feeling the anger and the tension coming from Caymanians, because you're saying, how long is a piece of string? Good evening, caller. You're live. Welcome to the show.
Highly, 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 highly sensitive indeed.
Yes.
You know my profession.
Mm-hmm.
I deal with a lot of issues with this, and it is heartbreaking, but this is what I want to say. The threshold should have been increased a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
It is way overdue. A lot of loopholes are found between even the biological parents who aren't even together, but are still allowed to combine the income once they're residing in Cayman on 2 separate work permits or whatever the case may be. And I see where that causes struggle, because they're saying, okay, the two incomes together can meet the 3,500 thresholds, and it really doesn't work. But say all of that to say this, a few years back, I don't remember how long, but it was a while back, there were guests on another talk show from the Cayman Food Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about, how the system works, and if you want to volunteer to help out with the food bank itself, and how people can donate, and yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. And we got to get you out of here now because it's 7 o'clock. So let me speed it up.
I'm looking here now to see Sandra running me. No, because we have content now, so this is why. Yeah, but go ahead.
So they were saying, coincidentally, that the biggest group of persons who come and get items from the food bank, large majority are permit holders.
Yes, we see the lines. We see the lines.
About that is every single person who fills out a work permit application to have a permit in the Cayman Islands has to answer that question regarding, are you able to
solvent? Are you solvent?
Are you solvent? Are you able to financially take care of yourself? And it goes to say that many people lie when it comes to that question.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you're struggling. And it's just unfortunate, basically, is what it boils down to. That's my 2 cents. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
it's 7:01.
You just dropped that and you gone, but should not say nothing yet. So I got to steal a little bit of time because it is so emotive. Maybe I can bring this back up tomorrow because we still didn't get to Denny on the Section 35. I know Mr. Balika went into it, but you know what? We can continue this tomorrow because immigration is very topical. This is very emotive. I do have other scenarios as well. And now what we're seeing now as well is the fact that it's becoming real. It's becoming a real issue that employees are now even stressed out at work because their families are struggling where they're coming from and they're not being productive on the job. Now, what happens, and I saw somebody posted, Damien Charles says, so what if they lose their job and that salary of $4,500 and approved before? Does the board check on that with the new job and salary? Now, this is where Mr. Balika was saying that at the end of the day, we don't know whether or not there will be a grandfather's clause, but it doesn't change the fact that when the renewal comes around, that they would probably be under the 4,500. This is where the grandfather's clause would actually save them, Damien. And it may not impact them, but it doesn't take away from the realities and struggles that is real. As we said, as that last caller said, the struggle is real for HR persons when we see exactly what's happening. And many a time, the truth is not being told on those forms in regards to what the water bill is, the light bill is, how much you spend on food, how much you spend on top up and all this sort of stuff. A lot of the times, there is no way that persons can really prove that that is true or not. And this is where it gets very sensitive, and it comes that we are not nice people, and that we don't care. That's not the case. At the end of the day, what is becoming of this immigration reform, I feel, is trying to match the needs and the acts of the people. But for so long, even though our numbers have dwindled, Caymanians felt that we were so nice that it's now used against us, that it's almost like they're cold. That's what is happening. And some of the conversations that are now being had, unscrupulous employers are now definitely treating them like they're on a plantation because of this aggressive manner in how certain things now are being implemented on work permit holders. And they know now that worse, and I'm going to go here, that Jamaica is unfortunately in this situation. People will be more tolerant because they're still trying to make a bread, but then employers are just exploiting them, taking advantage of them because they can't no better do, and they got to put up with it. Good evening, caller. You're live. Welcome. It's been a while.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fair to fine. In overtime until Sandra kick Mo.
Tell us, Sandra, we steal a little bit free time.
We teeping our wine. We teeping our wine.
One side at a time. Tell her calm down. I won't
What's on your mind, my love?
No, so I did
tuned in a little bit late, but I managed to hear a bit, and the last caller is spot on. But I have been banging on ad nauseum on my soapbox about the law as it relates to dependents and or work permit holders and their dependents. I, for one, beyond pleased to see that there's an increase. In that, I think that increase is reflective and representative of where we currently are. I will go a step further, and I don't mean to offend anyone. I dare say I think it's too low. If we know what the threshold or what we know we say or is required to live and survive in Cayman, I think that should be applied across the board for work permit holders too. It doesn't cost them any less. Well, it can cost them less to live here as a single person, but it doesn't cost them any less to live here as a person with even one dependent. And let's hope that dependent is not a child, because
you know how that is. It's easier when it's a spouse.
Correct.
But what happens when the child is even of special needs or have medical issues? We know just underlying conditions of people with coming here with diabetes, needing cancer treatment. Those premiums are through the roof.
But as other persons, I believe one of your commenters online have said, I personally believe that this undertaking to issue especially work permits with dependents and minor dependents are serious. It needs to be more in depth. I think that you need to have proof of a bank statement. You need to have proof of a valid lease. You need to present some utilities.
The problem is, my love, nobody is doing quarterly checkups, because I know you could get a partner draw and you put it in my account. And once it approved, it stays there until it's approved. But who's doing quarterly or interval checks to say that my balance remains the same?
Well, I mean, I don't think that the law requires you to maintain a certain.
No, but what I'm saying, you will know whether or not. You will know whether or not something fishy happened.
Absolutely, but the law should also hold an employer liable and to account if they make a false declaration. Me as a Caymanian, when I am applying for a work permit for my specialist caregiver, I had to provide an employment verification letter that confirmed my salary so that I could demonstrate to the immigration that I had the capacity to afford that domestic help.
But we have such nice persons out here that are willing to help somebody. They will write a letter to say otherwise.
Precisely. Like I'm saying, but if you have provided that letter falsely, not you, the immigration, I believe, has a responsibility, and the laws need to catch up to the regulations, or the regulations catch up to the law, whichever.
No, I think what is lacking that you're missing out is the enforcement arm.
Absolutely.
You can have perfect laws, you can have perfect regulations, but if you do not have the enforcement arm, aka the operational arm out there enforcing the very same law, everything that we're debating right now it makes no sense.
But we are going to continue to, excuse my language, piss this country down the drain when we continue to import the level of poverty that we are importing and have been importing. Now, I don't intend to offend anyone. I'm sure that there are people who are coming here who are making above the threshold, above the means, whatever the case is.
But that's only a certain sector of people. People are asking for a balance. Yeah,
but how can... Let's use your scenario that you presented earlier about a domestic helper, right? Listen, there are troubles and problems in every crevice of the earth. There are troubles and problems in Cayman, and we cannot write to nobody nowhere and say, well, let's make an exception to your immigration rule just for me, because right now it's not so good here for me.
Or based on who I'm working for or who my employer is. Yeah.
Exactly, right? You don't get to get those exceptions nowhere else in the world. I tell you, sometimes I think that Cayman is like a game of Sims. You make your own fantasy land and make your own rules, and it depends on who you are and the day of the week that it is. But the problem is, let's just say using your scenario and the helper earning what will be the new minimum wage come January 1, 2026, a minimum of $1,800. If you have an employer who is generous enough to cover your health insurance, you're carrying home your full salary, you have to pay rent, you have to pay probably utilities, you have to buy food, you have to cover basic living expenses. And if you put that at a minimum, let's just say $300. I think that is like, I don't know if you can afford to feed a cat for that and live, but let's put it at $300 because some people are willing to make sacrifices to make things work. And I get it.
But you have some employees right now under the circumstances for where they're coming from are willing to work even below minimum wage, but will declare it on a form that they're getting minimum wage just to stay here. So, I mean, at the end of the day, how can you even enforce this? How do you police this?
How do you police this? You ask them to regularly and randomly provide. First of all, I personally believe that all persons living and working in the Cayman Islands should have a bank account. You should have a bank account. You are taking advantage of systems and sectors here, the banking system, that you are not paying for. I am paying for a bank account. So why should my domestic not have to pay? Why should I be handing over cash 24/7? Why should there not be a paper trail? Why should there not be something that you can rely on? Why should it only be me? You should have the capacity to establish a banking relationship, not just for my safety and protection. I only pay my helper by direct transfer, and she has an operable bank account. But for yourself as well, I mean, I'm going to sound like Judge Judy, but most honest living employed persons operate a bank account unless you have something to hide. Bank fees are high, but guess what? There's not a rate for Caymanian bank fees and expatriate bank fees. That's the one thing that they haven't seen to separate based on nationality yet, right? And so I think that you should operate a bank account. That should be the bare minimum standard. Somebody mentioned earlier that there's a requirement to be solvent. How are you going to show that you are solvent if you've never had a bank account?
Exactly.
If you've never operated. How do you show that you're solvent? What have you been doing? So you want me to believe that you were existing in your country for 40 years, never struck a lick, and you won't come to my country to strike a lick? No. You are not fit for my country. You are simply not fit for my country. And I think that we end up with so many sixes for a ninth here. And yes, I'm going to say it. I often encounter people and I'm saying, well, you a helper and he is a gardener, but you got a child here. I don't understand. The math is not mathing. And we don't appreciate.
And they get approved. We get approved.
But this is it. But we don't appreciate that the burden that these people currently place on the system and could potentially place on the system. Let us not forget the child that we had here during COVID.
Yes, that came to mind. And then they realized that there was no medical.
Nothing in place.
And it was,
and who footed the bill?
The Cayman Islands government.
The Cayman Islands government. This isn't about being discriminatory. This isn't about being selfish or mean. But guess what? My two Caymanian children do not get the benefit of a government bailout when it comes to health or medical. When I go up there, whether they have insurance or not, and just to clarify, they do. However, nobody waives a payment for my two Caymanian children. And I don't know any government representative that you can call on to say, hey, can you help foot this medical bill? It simply does not happen. And we have to look at the overall infrastructure holistically. That child, by law, is going to be required to attend school. We already know that we don't have
enough space,
school or space for the influx of people that we are currently seeing. I mean, who is doing the planning for us? Who is doing it? I mean, I'm sure I'll just give the great US as an example. as an example, they know that each year they have a number where whether it's pie in the sky or I don't know how they come up with the formula for it, but they have a certain amount of permits for migrants that they allow, be it you're on a temporary migrant visa or a permanent migrant visa. There is a number that exists, or even a visitor visa. Mm-hmm. There is a number that exists. And I think I've read even in Australia, you know, they make sure that there's not an over concentration of Jamaicans, over concentration of South Africans, over concentration of this. But we've done nothing to seek to balance even the population that we have here. There is so much wrong with our current immigration infrastructure.
Because we're electing people who got elected without political ideology. We just want to get elected. And this is why they're looking.
I don't know.
Yeah. When you look at it from the earlier conversations, and this is where then you're scrambling to make a national plan to then get a budget. But are we really looking at the root causes of what we're having it from a balanced approach?
I don't think so. But we continue to throw money.
Correct. But not solving the problems
that have existed for eons and eons.
Yeah.
And we haven't even scratched the surface of what the problem is.
No.
Now, be it that we and I will say it here, like we are so, whether it's afraid, whether it's lack of fortitude, I don't know what it is, but it's like people are so afraid to say, you know what, Cayman and Caymanians first. They say it in theory, but they don't enforce it, right? And, you know, I mean, I can almost hear Mr. Jim Borden now, and I unapologetically, this is my position, and he stood on business, you know, and quite frankly, if you don't like it, there's the door. There's the door. Nobody in Cayman is forced to stay here, not even Caymanians.
I tell you what, we're having a lot more Caymanians that are looking for other places to go right now, and
but that is it. But
that's even us are trying to find alternate destinations that we can.
But how can we be such a paradise,
correct,
a safe haven,
and have to leave, and an
economic windfall for everyone who comes across our shores? I'm talking from the highest to the lowest. It's a windfall for most of them who come here, but yet Caymanians who have lived and worked and have their entire lives in this country have honestly struggled and tried to come ahead in this country, and it not for the lack of ambition or trying.
Oh, yeah.
They can't.
They just can't see their way forward. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Why? And you know, people say, "Oh, have you upskilled yourself? Have you done this?" They've done it. They've done it, Sabrina. They've done it. I just want to know what model is being used that Caymanians are still so disenfranchised, disadvantaged, and taken advantage of in this country, yet others come here and it's like they walk off of the plane to the pot at the end of the rainbow every single time, and Caymanians are still only at the beginning of the rainbow.
Which is what people are saying. How come people can come from, you have a term like, I would say, East Jabib. I say from the far coast, east of China without Wi-Fi, and they make it here and we can't make it here. Why? Is it that they're given opportunities we're not given? Is it because our locals favor them a lot more than they favor themselves?
We know that they are given, but we know, and anybody out there who doesn't say that this is the case, but we know that there are opportunities out there given to foreign nationals that don't even come across
locals.
Local
Caymanians.
So you mentioned earlier that, you know, if your employer is kind enough to give a contribution or an allowance toward your living expense, sweetheart, I'm a landlord. My apartment, I don't care who paid the rent, if it's you or your boss. Somebody have to pay it.
You got bills to pay?
I got my bills. I have my bills to pay, right? However, I don't know of any, and I stand corrected if there is, but guess what? My rent is the same whether you paying it or your boss paying it. But I've never had an instance where a Caymanian has had their rent covered or even contributed to by their employer. So it does not cost at least my rent is no less for a Caymanian or more than it is for I'm an ecumenical abuser. Everybody gets slapped with the same thing. You understand what I'm saying? So yes, and we would be fooled to believe that expatriates, in my opinion, aren't given some advantages here in this country. That's in one instance in terms of contribution toward living expenses. Not to mention when they have to move here, they're given moving expenses. Now, obviously, I would not expect for a Caymanian to, have to pay moving expenses, but why shouldn't you pay a little bit toward my housing? I have to live here too.
You offer that
And
to an
guess what?
expatriate. Why don't you offer the same package to your local?
Absolutely. And guess what? You don't have to pay a work permit fee for me.
Correct. So you're saving there already.
You're saving there already. And Caymanians are some of the most loyal people I have ever found in terms of employment.
And we'll give this shirt off for the back, and we still end up getting,
and we will stay there forever and a day. Forever and a day. So no, the playing field is not leveled. And this is not an us and them or whatever. But guess what? I don't know which Caymanian out there tonight under the sound of my voice is going to say, you know what? I can do without a little contribution from my boss to my living expenses. You know what? I really don't need it. I really don't need it.
You take that with open arms right now?
Exactly. So no, the playing field is not leveled. It is not leveled when it comes to employment and or other employment opportunities and or employment benefits. And they wonder why Caymanians are so disgruntled and out of pocket.
Right.
Or disgruntled and out of pocket. We simply cannot afford to compete. It's not that we don't want to. We can't afford to compete. So no, I do apologize. I don't have no sympathy for Tom that living in East Jabib that can no longer afford to bring
his
wife, his daughter, and his dog because we've chosen to raise the threshold. And no, there should not be a grandfather clause because guess what? Grandfather clauses don't apply to fosters. It don't apply to CUC. Cost of living goes up every year. So I don't understand how or why in God's green earth would you even impose a grandfather clause based on income? You cannot. When the cost of living is skyrocketing on a daily basis, I believe our latest increase was 2.3%. Yet you believe that a salary to provide for human beings, that's living, that's somewhere to live, something to eat, and possibly a car to drive. Basic. The same requirements that the bank requires. So when you go into a bank and you want to buy a little house, the only thing that they don't ask you about is how much money you spend on your car tire repair. And there's a certain threshold that you simply cannot exceed. So not only should we be applying a similar mechanism in determining whether or not that person can actually afford to be in Cayman with their dependents, but I think that the banks are quite, for large in part, quite successful, and they have come up with a ratio, the debt service ratio, where they've said, listen, we can't go below this. So you can be making $4,500. I'm gonna tell you right now.
If your expense exceeds 40% or 45, 50, that's it. You're not gonna qualify.
You could be hard pressed. There's only one bank I understand in this country that allows you to skirt up to that 50% threshold. Most banks are 40%, right? Because that's what they deem to be reasonable. Now, you have people rolling up and saying, my CUC bill is $72. I don't know. They must be burning a candle.
We have seen that. We have seen, and this is why now certain banks are asking you for the last 3 months of utility bills.
As it should be.
Yeah.
But why are the standards to get buy a car, get a house, open a bank account, any less
than immigration? Than
immigration. You can do far more damage to my country than you can do to a bank.
Yep. Well, leave me there, my love. Leave me there.
I'll leave you there.
All right. Thank you. We got one more caller. I'll take this last call and then we will wrap it up. I don't have a problem continuing tomorrow because I know the Section 35 has stirred some serious conversations, but I will take this up tomorrow because that will definitely take some time. Good evening, caller. You're live. You were calling?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you had gone.
No, we're yeah. I wasn't sure if you had anything to weigh in on that, so that's why I called you back.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like the caller said, where is the solver? Where is the proof? To prove that these people are solver that are coming here.
Correct.
Because they're ending up on NA. They're going to, I wouldn't say NAU, but they're going to the food bank. Every food bank, you go there, you can take a picture, you can see who is there. And they got their children there. They're supporting. They're sleeping in cars. They're sleeping in abandoned houses and all over. So where are the enforcement to make sure these people are not bringing more poverty to our country? Yes, everybody needs to be fed, but we can't be the savior for everybody.
Yep.
We are a very small population. We can't be the savior. We were when we were forgotten, we went out and we found employment. We came back home. We didn't go and try to take over people's country. We tried. We made ours. We came back home, appreciated, and we came back home.
I think what you just said there, my love, is actually what is actually when you said we didn't go to other people's country and try to take it over. And that too, the cultures and the behaviors that have been imported is what is angering, is what is frustrating the average Caymanian.
I mean, they're bringing their country down, bringing all of their behavior. I mean, we can just look on the roads. We can see how they drive, and that's how they drive back in their own countries. And that's why we got so many accidents every time now. And so we're in important poverty and criminal behaviors and everything. All kinds of cultures that the Caymanians were never. Like you said, I think they took our kindness for granted. They took all of them took advantage of that behavior because we were too nice. And now that this is what we're reaping from it, but we have to put our foot down somewhere. I mean, we can't struggle. I mean, the next generation, what are we going to do with ours?
Exactly.
Where's it going to go?
Well, we create an environment where we're not having children fast enough to fill every job, and that happens in every country. But have the enforcement arm to protect your people and the laws that protects your people so that they don't feel as though, others are coming in and really replacing them. And I think where or having more value than themselves in their own country is where I think this is going. And the more and more we talk about this and we get people to speak truly about how they feel, I think our policy and legislative makers will understand exactly the true temperature on the ground, because some of them are not in touch with reality. It is what it is.
That's just true. That's how cool that one. And because we got part of their regulations to qualify to get PRs at the house. They're overpricing everything so that the average Caymanian can't even afford the rent. Killing you. I mean, they're buying out the cheap homes and stuff and everything, pushing people out of their homes in different ways, and then they turn around, they're overpricing the rent. People can't even afford. Sometimes, can't even afford the rent. And they got nowhere. Some people don't want to take NAU to Caymanians to gas and stuff. I don't know if you've seen there's a video going on.
Yes, I did see that.
Where all the Caribbeans are being raped in many shapes and forms.
Correct.
But that's the reality of it.
That is a topic that I think Danny wants to speak about, but we're going to have to bring that up tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, well,
very interesting.
But it's the truth. It is the truth.
Yeah. They're not coming in warships and pirate boats anymore. They're doing it based on smart advertising. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Pen and paper.
Pen and paper. That's what Danny wants to go into. And we're going to definitely do that tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, my love. Thanks again. Sure. There we have it. Very interesting comments coming up here. And thank you, Damien. Once I know immigration is always very topical. Donna says, to be fair, there are expats who are not being paid timely, is also being talked badly to, as well as being disrespected, not paid for overtime, used in their workplace from the domestic to the private sectors. Those establishments don't want Caymanians there, as it is harder to do to them what and how they do and that treat their expat staff. While some don't care, they are just rude. And we have pointed out, thank you for that comment, Donna, of unscrupulous employers. I think one earlier caller had said about the $8.50 an hour for even the minimum wage. I think when you do that based on a 40-hour work week with the new law that's coming up, it's just a little under $1,400 a month. That even if you pay your salary, your staff minimum wage, it's now going to still be like under $1,400. So it still wouldn't meet the $3,000, the $4,500 if you're going to pay that. And this comes to a lot of those special caregivers or caregivers that are even taking care of some of our elderly persons. And they're going to find themselves in a shortfall, to be honest. If just the increase in filing fees, which we're not arguing that, we're just looking at how it's going to impact certain households. And now if employers are going to be looking at those good employers who have never, ever paid their staff minimum wage, but realistically, they have to be able to keep food on their own table in order to be able to pay you. It is a balancing act, to be honest. And this is where, at the end of the day, some personal choices are going to have to be made. And when it comes to these amendments, going back to exactly what we were talking about, the threshold, the income and all that sort of stuff, if your salary just doesn't meet the threshold, you may have to make a very painful choice of leaving your family. And the harsh reality that you may never have your child or children join you here. And this is not about love or commitment. It's about just outright sustainability and facing the truth head on. So we know that some sectors will never qualify based on what we're seeing here for dependents under our laws here in the Cayman Islands. That is just that, but at the end of the day, we have to look at it realistically. A lot of you pointed out your views, and Cayman's compassion versus, Cayman's capacity is something that we really have to look at from a realistic standpoint. And also, when you're looking at the family needs versus even community sustainability of our own self, it's going to be very hard to deliver. But I think some very emotive conversations are, first of all, going to have to be had with some of the foreign nationals that are here working on work permits. We're hoping that employers out there who are really treating their employees that are on work permits really, really badly will really have a reality check, because should they all pretty much evaporate out, then you won't have a shortfall for rental. Some of these places, Caymanians wouldn't even live in, to be honest, with some of the conditions in which our expatriates are living in. And they choose to, I think Sandra spoke about, even share a bed with somebody else. Some of our Caymanians will not do that. And at the end of the day, when it comes to them and questioning what laws are being put in place, it's going to be a hard decision that's going to be made. And how far backward or how much further can a jurisdiction like the Cayman Islands go in order to try and accommodate these acts without making sure that their people are taken care of? At the end of the day, we still have to deal with everybody and understanding, still deal with them empathetically, with dignity. But if our laws are our laws, just realize it's our laws. And enforcement now will definitely have to step up their game if we want to get our society back on a good footing. Otherwise, all that we're talking about where immigration reform is concerned, being able to capture these bad actors as employers, and even employees agreeing to work, declaring one thing on an application form, but working for far less, that has to stop. And, both parties right there, in my humble opinion, are responsible when it comes to that salary, to be honest with you, and that should never be tolerated. But as I close here tonight, 34 minutes in overtime, I probably get eaten. Let's just be considerate of everything, but also keep the reality checked. And I hope that you would have found this episode of Sabrina Speak again very informative, emotive as it was, but sometimes the facts is hard to really to swallow, and it is really hard to have, but it's a real conversation to be had. Damian Charles, is there a law that employers cannot give less than 45 hours with the new minimum wage if you were hired full time? I'm not aware of that, to be honest, Damian Charles, but I'll double check that and get back to you. That's why bank account should be a must. Yeah, I'm not so sure, but unless you're a part-time, and even if you're on a work permit, you should be full-time. Unless you're shared employer, you don't normally do part-time, but if you have one employer, the average work week is what it is. So that pretty much just based, but I will definitely look into that, but I don't think so. If just off the bat. Now what's happening in practice is another thing, Damian, to be honest with you. What's happening in practice is a different thing. And this is where both the work permit holder and the employer is responsible and should be held accountable. Damian Henry, overtime for a good cause. I liked that line that Mr. Woody had actually used yesterday. Should we go into the Sunday trade and persons given a choice to work at Foster's on the weekends? You know, yeah, let's see how that unfolds, but we're still going to get that poll up and running, whether or not you feel the operational law that allows supermarkets right now that are over 3,000 square foot to open on Sundays. We're going to do a poll to get your feedback on that, whether or not you would agree for that square footage to be removed. So Kirk's, Foster's, no matter the square footage, so that they can actually open now on Sundays. It'll be good to get your feedback on that. Yes. So it has been brings me to an end of this episode. And I'm again happy that you joined me. Thank you all for your call-ins, for your participation. And just let me leave you with this. You know, we must walk between dignity and realization. And sometimes realizing the truth is the truth can be hard. But in all honesty, Cayman can't carry more than it can sustain. And that's where we're busting at the seams. And I think that is coming to a head right now. And Caymanians are realizing that. And families must understand that these thresholds, employers must be honest. See where I'm going with this? And Caymanians must protect their community. This, my friends, is not easy, but it is necessary. And at the end, how do we balance compassion for families with the reality that Cayman is saying enough is enough? So I'll leave that question there. Enough of taking advantage of our niceness, enough of us being so kind, and then we end up holding the poopy end of the stick. You know, at the end of the day, how much more can we do? Donna, hope you're doing better, feeling better. Thank you so much. And God bless. Until tomorrow evening for another episode of Sabrina Speaks, we will go into, I don't have a problem continuing on in this vein where immigration is concerned. And I saw an article as well about flying in pajamas, etiquette while traveling. Just to get your take on that, I wanted to dabble a little bit into that tomorrow, but I know how emotive immigration is, the real talks. I'm feeling the tension in the air. And I feel this is an excellent space to hear all sides, but silence is consent and silence does not solve the problems. So do have a good evening. It has been a pleasure bringing you another episode of Sabrina Speaks. Love you lots. Until tomorrow, have a good night.
That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, Cayman, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.